Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in tonight. In last night's episode, we learned about the environmental toxins that are compromising the immune system, overburdening our bodies. Dental procedures, genetically modified organisms, environmental chemicals, and so forth. In tonight's show, we're going to learn how to get rid of all of these environmental toxins, all of this toxicity to our system, to our immune system, that is compromising that immune system, making us more susceptible to cancer. You've been collecting toxins your whole life. Your body is full of toxicity. We've got to learn how to get it out. And tonight's episode is going to teach you exactly how to do that. This short clip from Dr. Charles Majors is profound. It summarizes the entire episode. Listen to it.
Changing your environment changes the possibility of getting cancer.
And that's why I always start my focal point of healing for anybody by working with the liver and the gut. And then we are not even necessarily chasing a symptom, chasing a disease, but we're correcting the terrain, the milieu, or the environment at its source.
And cleanse, cleanse, cleanse.
So it's important to detoxify, to get rid of the toxicity in order to keep your body alkaline, in order to keep it clean, in order to give the cancer an inhospitable breeding ground, I guess.
Yeah, you really got to get that terrain, because it doesn't matter if you cure yourself with chemo, with cannabis hemp oil, with alkaline diet, it's going to come back if you didn't change the terrain.
You find a body that's not well, all kinds of symptoms. We mentioned some of the common killers in America. And from those symptoms, first thing we would do is say, we're going to take you just like that piece of land. Let's detoxify you first. Let's take out the heavy metals, the volatile organic chemicals. Studies have been done looking at Americans where these are legitimate labs, FDA-approved labs that have looked at urinary output from volatile organic chemicals. BPA, bisphenol A, is one that's commonly found in almost all of us. Flame retardants in almost all of us. You think, well, how did it get there? You know, the fact is that many of us have been exposed to frightening levels of chemicals that in many cases are hormone disruptors. That is, they affect the ability of the body to make male or female hormones, insulin. The many hormones are now dysregulated. So those chemicals, the heavy metals, the toxic burden in the gut, many of us are causing what's called autotoxemia. Auto is in self, toxins in the gut, back to that 100 trillion cells. Those 100 trillion microorganisms are making, if you're doing things right, they'll make vitamin K2, which is an anti-cancer substance. If you're doing things right, they'll make a little bit of gas, as in hydrogen, which actually will be absorbed into the bloodstream and is a powerful antioxidant. They'll make a little bit of butyrate, which is such a powerful anti-cancer substance that it's being researched at the National Cancer Institute. If you're doing things right, if you eat right, if you don't drink too much alcohol, drugs, antibiotics, then you're going to have a healthy level of bacteria in the gut and it will make you healthy. If you don't do things right, those organisms start generating their own toxins, which are then absorbed into the bloodstream. And if things really get ugly, then your intestinal lumen will become dysfunctional, hyperpermeable, and now what you have is what's supposed to be a screen door that keeps the bugs out. Now we've got tears and rips in it. Now we have microorganisms moving into the bloodstream. It's called bacterial translocation. And now you have yeast, Candida albicans, bacteria, yeast, virus, other organisms that can move into the bloodstream and generate autoimmune diseases, even cancer. There's a whole chapter in my book, Beating Cancer with Nutrition, that talks about, is cancer in some cases actually an infection? And that's a whole fascinating subject. Back to the business of what does a garden have to do with our body? Detoxify.
The word detoxification is like the word love. It's cheap. Everybody uses it, but few people know what it means, okay? If you can effectively, and that's the key operative word, effectively detoxify the body, these seven toxicities, chronic disease can't exist. So what we're saying is that if you can eliminate the oxidative stress from these 7 different causes, then you can actually eliminate these supposedly incurable diseases. The interesting thing about autism and cancer, the commonality, is they're both situations of an impaired ability to detoxify.
Okay, explain that. What do you mean?
So an average individual has a normal mechanism of getting rid of trash out of their body. But cancer patients, autistic patients, they may have a genetic predisposition for the inability to excrete certain things, metals, persistent organic pollutants, whatever the case is. They don't have the compensatory reserves or the compensatory ability to get rid of some of this accumulation of garbage. And so if you can help the body facilitate getting rid of this trash out of the body, you can end up getting a result. I actually often have said that I'm nothing more than a glorified trash man because I just can take out the trash better. That's really what it comes down to.
And so that's the way that you treat both autism and cancer, is
That's the
removing
commonality,
the trash.
absolutely. That's the brunt of what we're doing. And then we do some things to help replenish things that may be deficient, but the key brunt of what we're doing is all detoxification.
So how do we get rid of heavy metals from our body? That's a real problem. How do we do it? It's a technique called chelation. Chelation, C-H-E-L-E, is the Latin word that means to claw. And so these substances go into your body and they claw the heavy metals, they bind to them, and then you excrete them. Let's go to talk to Dr. Rashid Buttar in North Carolina. He's an expert at chelation therapy and detoxification.
You don't use chelation to treat cancer or autism, you treat chelation to remove heavy metals. And heavy metals cause oxidative stress, and it's the oxidative stress that is the commonality in all the toxicities that lead to disease. Remember I said it's toxicity and a deficiency, right? So in the toxicity, you've got those 7 toxicities I mentioned: heavy metals, persistent organic pollutants, the opportunistics, the energetics, the negative energetics, the emotional, psychological, the spirit, the foods, what we do to foods, and then the spiritual, those 7 toxicities. The mechanism of action of all those 7 toxicities is the same. It's oxidative injury.
Okay, when you say oxidative injury, what do you mean?
I'm talking about the free radical reaction or the reduction reaction called oxidation or oxidative injury, which is nothing more than the rusting process. Think of a banana, you peel it, in 5 minutes it starts turning brown. That's the rusting process. That's free radical damage. That's oxidation that's going on. Apple, you cut it, within 5 minutes it starts turning brown. That's happening to the body constantly. There's certain things that accelerate that oxidative injury. So the body has natural mechanisms to reduce that damage, but there's certain things that we get exposed to that accelerate that damage. And that acceleration of that damage comes from those 7 toxicities. So heavy metals is the first one because that's really the order in which it was revealed to me as I evolved in my understanding of this process. And so heavy metals is that first one, the oxidative injury. You can actually get oxidative injury from also essential minerals. Copper, selenium, iron in too high of a dose will also act as a heavy metal and cause that oxidative injury. So chelation is the process to remove the burden of those metals to help to reduce the free radical reaction. That's really what it comes down to. Now, you mentioned about autism and cancer, and we have had great results in both, and we've treated over 1,900 cases of autism in the last 17 years, and my protocol has been used well over 30,000 children now worldwide from doctors that have used our protocol. But it's interesting that autism is considered non-treatable and cancer is considered non-treatable, and we've had this tremendous success in both areas. Why? Because the philosophy is sound. You eliminate these 7 toxicities, and by definition, chronic disease can't exist. The key operative word is you have to effectively detoxify the body of these 7 toxicities.
The mercury is from the environmental production, whether they're mining in South Africa or they are burning coal in China. There is mercury, and like I mentioned before, there's 50 professions that deal with mercury. In some kind of process of their job, they're dealing with mercury. So mercury is everywhere. Arsenic, I mean, Discover magazine had the front cover, the metals in your food. I mean, the EPA says there's no safe level of any heavy metal and your toxic heavy metal in your body. Okay, so when they put norms there, okay, first of all, how do I know what's normal for you? Okay, what may be normal for you may be terribly destructive to me.
Because we're individuals. We're
individuals, and so I might not be able to handle one little anything of mercury, and you might be able to, I can handle this, I can manage it. But the EPA says, the Environmental Protection Agency says, there's no safe level of these metals, arsenic, mercury, aluminum, in your body. And so, we have to eat foods that help us detoxify.
What do we do? What are you doing now to prevent cancer from a dietary perspective?
You're the first person to have asked me this on camera, and a lot of the research I'm going to cite here has just been completed. I've done extensive research on what's called the metals capturing capacity of different types of foods. I call it the MCC, where I test using a synthetic gastric acid digestion simulator that I built in the lab. I test foods versus contaminants, and I find out how much of the contaminant gets bound to the food. and thereby carried out of your digestive tract as insoluble fiber rather than being absorbed through your intestinal walls and going into your blood.
Okay.
This is a key concept to understand to answer your question. Processed foods have very low capturing capacity because the fibers are typically processed out of them. They're also structurally compromised through processing. They're denatured.
Right.
In other words,
Which makes them into unfood.
Unfood. So if you eat, let's say, a processed food meal or a beverage that is contaminated with, let's say, 10 parts per million of mercury, you are likely to absorb the vast majority of that mercury through your intestinal walls that goes into your blood. Or it could be radioactive cesium-137.
Okay.
Mercury, cesium, lead, cadmium,
Whatever it might be.
Right. But if you are eating a diet of unprocessed fresh foods,
Okay.
this is a whole plant-based diet, what we have found is that natural plants, fresh produce, such as strawberries,
Okay.
have very high natural metals capturing capacity. They're able to bind with the metals, mostly through physical processes of absorption and adsorption as well. Some foods have selective ionic affinity to specific metals such as lead.
Okay. Which means they
That they have a chemical reaction that binds up
Bind
the
with
metal.
them, right.
Yeah, it's chemistry taking place
Okay.
in the acidic environment of your stomach,
Okay.
typically, with your own gastric acid. Strawberries will bind with over 90% of your dietary mercury. Strawberries. And the reason this is the case is because strawberries are the only common fruit that has seeds on the outside of the fruit.
Okay.
The seeds being on the outside, how are they grown? How are they produced by the strawberry? Well, there are strands, fibers, that send nutrients to the seeds from the center of the strawberry. The center is where it gets its nutrition. It distributes it through the fibers to the seeds.
Okay.
These fibers, which are transparent practically under a microscope, happen to be very, very tough fibers. They will not be digested by nitric acid in the laboratory.
Wow.
I can take strawberries, I can put them, mix nitric acid, we're talking like 70% nitric acid, very strong oxidizer that would burn the skin right off your hand.
Yeah.
It will not digest the fibers in the strawberry. The fibers survive human digestion, which is far weaker than nitric acid digestion.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
orders of magnitude weaker.
Sure.
The strawberries then will bind to the dietary mercury with these fibers, and that gets pushed out of your system through bowel movements. The mercury is gone, it's out. Never gets pulled into your bloodstream through intestinal walls. So many different types of fruits and vegetables have very interesting affinities to heavy metals, and this is what our research has really uncovered. The only thing that we found better than strawberries, by the way, is chlorella, which is about 98 to 99% efficacy. But chlorella doesn't work for other things such as uranium. Chlorella doesn't absorb much uranium. Spirulina does,
Yeah.
but not strawberries.
Okay.
So one of the things that I've done in the lab is whether it's radioactive elements such as cesium-137 or customary heavy metals like mercury, arsenic, things that cause cancer. Arsenic is linked to cancer, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, you know what tends to absorb arsenic? Fruit seeds.
Fruit seeds.
Fruit seeds.
Okay.
Which is why some fruit seeds contain arsenic, naturally.
Okay.
There's arsenic in apple juice. Remember
Sure.
that scare?
Yeah, I remember that.
Because the apples, when apple plants, apple trees, tend to take up arsenic in the soil, which came from the lead arsenate pesticides that we already talked about. They tend to concentrate it in the seeds because the seeds have a natural affinity to arsenic.
Okay.
But if you can get apple seeds, grape seeds, raspberry seeds, blueberry seeds, believe it or not, we've tested all these things. If you can get your hands on these seeds, which by the way are removed from almost all the foods
Of course.
that are sold in the grocery store.
Yeah.
If you buy grape jam, you don't want seeds in it. If you
Right.
buy blueberry jelly, you don't want blueberry seeds in it.
And that's where all the good stuff is.
It's the seeds that bind with the dietary arsenic
Wow.
and transport it out of your body. Yeah, I haven't released that information yet. You're the first person to have this conversation.
Dr. Wolf, talk about your family, the history of your family, and how that's impacted you as well.
All right, well, I'm going to talk about three people. being my grandfather and my mother and father. I'll make it short and sweet. My grandfather ended up getting rectal cancer, okay? And he was a beer drinker. But if you're, you know, if you drink 3 beers a day, the best way to get rectal cancer is 3 beers a day, right? If you do not detox. Remember something. In the medical system, there's 2 things they never talk about because they're not allowed to talk about, and that is diet and that is detox. Meanwhile, if you talked about diet and you talked about detox, you wouldn't need the medical system, except for emergencies and things of that nature. All right? We all have a place to play, but when we get greedy and we try to own everything, that's when corruption comes in. So anyways, my grandfather got colon cancer. He came with us to stay with us, and then he went into the hospital. What happened was he got impacted. So he was in pain. Well, and they couldn't do anything for him. We brought him home. We broke the impaction, which was in his bowels. Okay, we got him on a proper juicing and cleansing diet. This is when I was younger, like I was a teenager that we did this. And we got rid of his pain, but we didn't get rid of his cancer. It was way too late. Then there was my father. My father lived in Nova Scotia. I was living in Toronto. I was in business. Had a clinic for only about 4 years now. So anyways, he gets leukemia. I get a call from my brother. My brother says, Dad's in the hospital, he's got leukemia. I said, why didn't he call me? Well, of course he's not going to call you, Daryl. You're just going to get mad at him. And I said, he's got leukemia, Marcel. And he said, yeah, but they only give him 2 weeks to live. I said, Marcel, you listen to this. I know one thing, and that's one thing for sure. Nobody is allowed to play God. Next thing is, okay, nobody's allowed to give an expiry date. And the only reason why they can give an expiry date, okay, all right, is because they go by rules. Those rules are, we're not going to teach you about diet. We're not going to teach you about detoxification. We're going to give you some drugs and we're going to send you home and let you continue to do what caused the cancer, and we're not going to do anything else. And then we're going to attack you with the big 3 cancer treatments, right? So anyways, I said, Marcel, you go into that hospital and you get a wheelchair and you get him out of there. Daryl, they said that they're not going to let him go. He's got 2 weeks to live. I said, listen to me. He's only got 2 weeks to live. If you have to take a baseball bat in there, you do it, but you get him out. So he got him out. He put him on a plane. When he landed in Toronto, okay, he had cold sores all over his lips. His eyes were yellow. His skin was yellow. And he was like just drooping down. My heart just broke. And I just went, okay, so we took him home. I'll make a long story short. He's got 2 weeks to live, right? 2 weeks later, I won't tell you what we did, but 2 weeks later, my father had his suitcases packed to go visit his cousin. Okay? And they couldn't find the leukemia 6 weeks later in his system. We don't have time for that right now, but this story can be verified. Next thing is, my mother calls me 12 months after this. Okay, she calls me up. She can't talk. Her boyfriend says to me, listen, your mother's in trouble. They want to cut her tongue out and they want to cut a piece off her butt and make that a tongue for her because she's got mouth cancer. I said, she's got to come see me. So she lived in Kitchener, so she came to Toronto. So she can't even speak. She speaks like this. She couldn't even talk. Well, anyways, I put her, we did fasting, we did some cleansing, we did a bunch of things, right? In 8 days, my mother, she could talk and you could hear her. You could understand her talking. So right away we know we're doing okay. So then I have to go to Salt Lake City to do an international conference. So I leave to go to Salt Lake City. I come back. My mother takes off back home, back to her McDonald's cigarettes and her alcohol. 9 months of super pain, and then she passes on. So everything is a choice here, okay? And all I want to make sure is that we are giving people that choice.
So Dr. Wolf, you have written a pamphlet that I think has been turned into a little booklet. It's called Spoiled Rotten. And that has to do with what you've been talking about, people that are walking around that look like they may be pregnant, but they're really not. Can you talk about spoiled rotten?
Well, Ty, spoiled rotten. Well, you know what that means? What does spoiled rotten mean, Ty?
Well, I mean, typically we hear spoiled rotten and you think of a child that you have spoiled rotten. But in this case, it means something different, doesn't it?
It means that you do no longer take ownership for your decision making. It means that you no longer take ownership for your decision making or for the responsibility of the body that you've been given. Think about this one. We have been given a body and a chance to come down here and experience a life here, okay? We have everything we need. We even have more than everything we need. But meanwhile, everybody is in pain. Now, why are they in pain? Because they're spoiled rotten, okay? Because they have a conscious level. Most people have, and I'm not trying to down people, okay, and I mean that. But most people have a conscious level, Ty, of 4 inches. That's from their mouth to the back of their throat. And then they have 30 feet of hell, okay? And we have been brainwashed to only have 4 inches of pleasure and give up 30 feet. Now, why are we spoiled rotten? Well, I don't know, Ty. How many people can go to the washroom and they don't leave a stink in the washroom? How many people do not wake up with bad breath? Bad breath is not something you ate yesterday. Bad breath is caused because you have foodstuffs that have been rotting in you, not for days, not for weeks, but for years. You know what, Ty? A person will change the vacuum cleaner bag out when it's full because they don't want to burn out the engine. The average guy will make sure that he has his oil change and tune-up on his car. You won't allow the garbage to sit under the sink for more than a day because it might stink up your house. But you know what? You have the conscious level of thought that you will allow yourself to use toxic chemicals under your arms. You will use breath mints and brush your teeth many times to hide the putrefaction that's happening in your stomach. You'll use spray and deodorant throughout your house and mainly in your bathroom to hide the rot that's inside of you. You give me one symptom, Ty, from your top of your head to your toe, and I will tell you that if you got into gentle daily cleansing of your detoxification system, which is your large intestine, which is the mother of all organs, it is the mother of all organs. It is more important than any other organ in the human body. Because how could your blood be dirty, your liver be overtaxed? How could your kidneys be in trouble? How could you have skin conditions? How could you have mucus coming out your eyes? Okay? How could any of this happen unless you are reabsorbing your own toxic waste? Allowing your large intestine, which is the sewer system of your body, to become a cesspool. What does a cesspool breed, Ty? A cesspool breeds parasites, viruses, bacteria, fungus. That is a parasite party. And then what are you going to do? Listen to me. They don't tell you to detoxify because they know that detoxification is the greatest weapon against the medical system. If you don't detoxify, then that means that you're going to have inflammation. If you have inflammation, you're going to have pain. Eventually, that pain is going to bring your immune system down, just like draining a battery, and you don't know why. When that battery gets drained, then anything. We take in viruses, bacteria every day, but they don't harm us because we're strong. But they allow you to drain your energy out because you're a sugar carbo junkie. And you eat dead foods, and guess what? Dead foods don't vibrate. They don't have energy. So it sucks the living force out of you. They're winning again. Then when that happens, Ty, you're in so much bloody pain that now this infection comes in, a bad bacteria has a feast on you, and now what? You've got some kind of illness. You go to the doctor. Well, he's just going to write you a script for an antibiotic. 250 million scripts are written every year for antibiotics. Now, that's in the United States. You need to take one course of antibiotics to totally create a life of hell if you don't know how to detoxify. Because what happens is when you take those antibiotics to kill off that invader, what happens then? What that does is it takes the good bacteria, which are the main part of, did you know that the main part of your immune system lives in your large intestine, and that's your good bacteria. They do more than you'll ever dream of. Now, those good bacteria, what happens when antibiotics come in? They don't all get killed off. Because remember something, antibiotics go in and they obliterate. So when they go in, they take that good bacteria and they change it over to a bad bacteria. That bad bacteria now, guess what? you just finished yourself. Because remember something, 85% of all pain is where? Oh my God, right here? Well, wouldn't that make us wake up? Oh, let me see, I'm in pain here all the time. What's happening? And then that creates pain through the other parts of the body. So now, those bad bacteria, what do they crave, Ty? And tell me, the medical system knows this.
Sugar, carbohydrates?
That's right, sugar and carbohydrates. So, you know, look at people how they drink wine now, every night. That's good marketing, but they crave that. They crave alcohol. They crave chips. They crave pop, anything with sugar in it. And then that sugar goes in, and guess what it does? It feeds those bad bacteria, and they give off what's called endotoxin. That endotoxin goes into your body and creates more inflammation. That inflammation then creates acidosis, which is the root cause of all disease, because now you're messing with your pH. That acidosis creates crystallization. Listen to me. The older you get, you're like a wood, you're like board, you're stiff. Oh, my achy joints. Well, that's all crystallization. And what happens when you have pain in the body? The body goes into helping you. It goes into a mode of helping. What does it do? It sends fibrin, which is like scar tissue to an area. So if you're always in inflammation, you're going to have tons of scar tissue. If you have tons of scar tissue, you're blocking your circulation. If you're blocking your circulation, you're creating mutation. Let me tell you something. Antibiotics, they're pushed more than anything else. And antibiotics are what are going to bring people down and create a life of hell. If they don't start detoxifying,
Talk about the lymphatic system.
We're being poisoned to death. One of the systems that is the garbage removal system of our body is the lymph system. And very few cancer physicians pay attention to the lymph system. It is the basis of lymphocytes. These are the good guys. And it also is the garbage removal system of the body. And I use a device myself. I have one that I use on myself called a light beam generator. But there's a few of them that fractionalize the molecules. You know, women who have surgery in the breast and the lymphedema happens. As a matter of fact, that's how I earned my doctorate. A woman in Pennsylvania had a leg that was so swollen she was about to die. Her husband, who was a retired rear admiral in the Navy, buys my book and sees a doctor in Oregon, takes his wife, Muffy Fanning, to Oregon, and they're looking at through the electric thermal screening device and the dark field microscope, and they finally put her to sleep and then wake her up, takes her blood, and they see the parasite for elephantitis. And they use conventional drug here. See, I'm not against medicine. I'm against, in emergency and trauma, they're the best in the world. But in degenerative disease, there are certain drugs and heroic surgeries. I would have been blind, I'm 87, without these cataracts removed. And I have lenses sewn in. I can see close with one eye, and just, it's amazing what a wonderful medicine can do. But don't confuse that with degenerative disease, where they become legalized drug pushers and paying no attention to the immune system except to cut it out when they find cancer near the breast. So you must fractionalize the molecules and open up. Now, very few cancer clinics use it and need it and do it. But that's one of the ways you get the immune system functioning optimally.
So, Dr. Wolf, tell us what we can do, the people that are watching that have that belly that look like they're pregnant, but they're not. How do we get rid of the toxicity internally now? You've given us the steps that we can do externally. How do we get rid of the belly?
well, Ty, I'll tell you something. You know, I've worked with, when I ran my other clinic, we had over 200 products, because you get lost in this whole product thing. I'm not there anymore. You know, it's the simple steps in life that actually make the big differences, okay? I use a product called Master Cleanse Tea, and I want to just say this, that I already said that you need to do things gently on the body. You know, we need to start loving the body, not attacking the body. You know, we've been taught to attack it, right? It's like it's the war on cancer. You know what? When you attack cancer, you attack the whole human body. Anyway, so we need to gently love it. So I have my patients and people who are interested in detoxifying do what's called Master Cleanse tea. It tastes like iced tea. They do this. They drink only an 8-ounce glass twice a day. Now, how difficult is that? It's inexpensive, it's simple, it's effective, and that's all we have to do. Because, see, once you start cleansing out the large intestine, okay, and how long does the large intestine take to clean? Do you want to know? Not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. Did you know that the normal large intestine with no problems to it, if you've never done a detox, takes 9 months? So after doing the tea for 9 months, now the tea is going in and it's working on your liver, working on your kidneys, working on your bloodstream. Do you understand? So a little bit every day will keep everything else away. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So that's a really important thing. The other thing is remember I told you that the core is really important? So what you put into your mouth, just ask yourself this one thing, because there is no such thing as a neutral food. Will this food give me life? Does it breathe life? Or will this bring in toxins? That's all you need to ask yourself. The more man touches it, the less I want to eat it. The closer it is to nature, when I replug myself in, I will be healthy and I will be vibrant. That is that. So what we have our patients do is we have them do things like rebounding. Rebounding is one of the best exercises against cancer and every other disease because it moves your lymph system better than anything else, and moving your lymph is the most important thing against cancer and disease.
That's fascinating, Dr. Wolf. Tell me why. Tell us why. Why is rebounding so important?
Well, remember what I said? I always want you to question people. I want all my patients. I say, you question me and you question everyone else. If they're not speaking logic, if 1 and 1 and don't make 2, or if you go there and you go, I'm confused, or if you feel fear from something I said, chances are I'm lying or I don't know I'm lying. Okay, so rebounding. Think about it. When your children were young and they couldn't walk and they were like little babies and they were crying, what did you do for them, Ty? Do you remember? You bounced them on your knee. Or you rocked them on your shoulder. Why'd you do that? Because you aren't totally brainwashed. You still have some instinct left. So you rock the baby, right? And you rock the baby because the only way that the lymph system can move is by up and down motion. And your lymph system, okay, you've got 8 pints of blood, but you've got 12 quarts of lymph. Don't you forget that. And when you find that you're getting all puffy and swollen, that's your lymph system and you're in big trouble. So you know when people, they swell up like a puffball? Well, that's because they're retaining water because they're so bloody toxic and they've been backing up waste for years. So when you start cleansing out the colon and then you rebound, you're moving that stuff. If you move the circulation, it's like if the water doesn't move, you better not drink it because it's going to kill you because it has to circulate. So rebounding also exercises every cell individually, toning it.
Yeah, so the lymphatic system is something that I think people aren't as aware of as their lungs and their heart. The lymphatic system is basically, to some degree, an overflow valve for the body. So what happens is, we all know our heart pumps blood out to our distal extremities. They go from arteries, and the arteries go to capillaries, and then the capillaries. So most of the blood that pumps through your body, it's constantly pumping through your body, goes from arteries to capillaries and passes back into your heart through veins and goes in this circuit through your heart and your lungs. There's some bleed off, okay, and that's what we call interstitial pressure in tissues, and there's some bleed off where fluid, and a lot of it has to do with osmotic forces. I don't know if you remember, people remember osmosis and basically tissue pressure gradients. And some of this fluid will bleed off into that interstitial pressure, because the pressure inside the vessels is greater than the pressure outside the vessels, and there's some bleed off, some loss of fluid. Well, that fluid doesn't jump back into your veins. It has to go somewhere. That's why some people get edema. They'll get swelling in their ankles and swelling in different parts of their bodies. Well, where does that fluid go? Does it just disappear? It goes into your lymph system. So your lymph system is a system of vessels. There's different components to it, but your lymph system is a system of, it's kind of like vessels. They don't have muscular walls like big arteries, but the lymph system grabs this fluid and then returns it back into the system, ultimately back into the venous system through a large duct in your chest called your thoracic duct. But this extra fluid that sort of bleeds out through these capillaries will then feed back into that system. It also passes through other parts of your body, including your spleen, okay? And that's also sort of considered part of your lymphatic system, your thymus, your tonsils and your adenoids, what a lot of people will have removed as a child. There's lymph tissue where there's lymphocytes, and those lymphocytes recognize pathogens, viruses, bacteria, or things that are considered non-self, and your body builds immunity through those lymphocytes, which is what's affected when someone has an immune deficiency disorder. Whether you believe in HIV virus or not, there's certainly immune deficiency disorders, and T4 cells and helper cells, different classes of cells are affected when the immune system falters, and those are the little soldiers that are facing these pathogens, these bacteria, these antigens, toxins even, as they pass through the lymphatic system, and sort of as a kind of like your oil filter, I guess. They're filtering out some of the nasty stuff. So the reason jumping on a trampoline is useful is because your lymphatic system, unlike other parts like your muscles in your heart or your skeletal muscle, it doesn't have its own muscle. It doesn't have a muscle wrapped around it. Like arteries have muscle around them. It's called the tunica media. It's what helps vascular changes. You can actually change the pressure by those muscles clamping down or letting go. Well, the lymphatic system doesn't have that ability, and so it depends on the skeletal muscles for that return. So by compressing your thighs, by just simply walking, you're actually pushing lymph through your body. It's sort of passively pushed through by the other muscles in your body. And so by hopping on a trampoline, you're basically forcing those muscles to contract, and you're helping that drainage. Instead of having it collect in your ankles, like you see people with swollen ankles, you're helping some of that return. And that's why when people start having problems with blood pressure and their heart, they sometimes will get swollen ankles, because that big pressure differential is pushing all that fluid out into their interstitial tissues, and their lymph system can't keep up, especially if they're sedentary. If they're sitting around, they're sick, their heart, they have they have congestive heart failure, and their heart has poor return, so they get dizzy quickly. They're not going to be able to get up and walk around to help push that lymph back into their venous system. And so a healthy person can just constantly contract their muscles and keep that going. It also prevents you from, that constant activity is what also helps you from getting deep vein thromboses. I don't know if you remember, I can't remember who he was. There was a reporter who was embedded in either Afghanistan or Iraq. He's kind of curled up in a ball and got dehydrated. He got DVTs because of inactivity, okay, because he wasn't walking around, and that clot was thrown to his heart, and he died. He was 44 years old. I know he's in his early 40s when it happened. Very unusual, but again, inactivity is bad for you. And so, and the converse is true. I think activity is good for you. And that's why that specific form of exercise helps helps assist the lymphatic system in returning that fluid back to the venous system.
Dr. Sani, talk about far infrared saunas. I know that you're a big proponent of far infrareds. Talk about the effect that this can have on cancer.
So far infrared saunas, the way they work is relatively simple. They exploit or take advantage of a portion of the electromagnetic spectrum that basically increases the temperature of the body, creates hypothermia, without exposing the body to some of the negative portion of the spectrum, which we know is the ultraviolet spectrum. Go out in the sun too much, you can get skin cancer, especially if you don't wear sunscreen and you're light complected. So far infrared sauna takes a part of that spectrum that creates heat, but not necessarily damage in the way that being out in the sun does. I think the Indians were probably, the American Indians and people who were doing these, more ritualistic heat treatments on themselves long before far infrared saunas were around. Kind of, maybe they didn't understand the science behind it, but they knew it was good for you. But basically, what it does is it raises your body temperature, and then your body has to release that heat. The way we release our heat is by sweating, and that sweating the sweat helps carry the heat away from the body. So by stimulating that mechanism, people don't realize this, but you excrete just as much urea, okay, through your skin, right? Maybe more. I'd have to go back and look up the numbers, but a significant amount of toxins are excreted through your skin as they are in your urine or your stool. And in some cases, probably specific toxins even more. And so by exposing yourself to a reasonable time frame and a reasonable level, a safe level of heat, you can just basically stimulate your body to sort of accelerate that excretion of toxins, and you can make that happen faster. The other reason a far infrared sauna is so useful is that normal cells are able to withstand heat because of their normal anatomy compared to the abnormal anatomy of, say, a cancer cell, especially in relation to its vascular supply. And so a cancer cell doesn't do well in a hyperthermic situation. This has been shown in mainstream science to be the case. And so by exposing your body to that heat, you're selectively killing or eradicating those less viable cells, those cancer cells, without hurting your normal cells. And so a far infrared sauna is useful because it can help you sweat, excrete toxins, and in theory eliminate cancer cells which can't survive the heat as well as the normal cells.
Concerning coffee enemas, is that something you think would be appropriate for people that may not have been diagnosed with cancer, but just in light of the toxic overload that we have today, that's something that could stimulate the liver to help secrete all of the toxins? Is that something that is good for people that don't have cancer?
I believe so. Now, I have to put in a disclaimer when I say something like that, since we live in a litigious world, so I'll say that I'm not telling any of your audience, I'm not advising them to do it. They need to get instruction on how to do it properly. But having said that, yes, I do think that they're beneficial for anybody, and I think most people find they feel better with them. So they tend to sell themselves. None of our patients coming in for the first time ever believe this, but I tell them it's going to be your favorite part of the program, and they come back and say, you're absolutely right. I never miss the coffee enemas because they made me feel so much better.
What is it about the coffee in the enemas that helps to detoxify the body?
Interestingly enough, when you drink coffee, it tends to suppress the liver. When you take coffee as an enema rectally, the caffeine stimulates a bunch of nerves in the lower colon called the sacral parasympathetic nerves. When they are turned on by caffeine, they feed back to the liver through a reflex arc, and within seconds cause the liver to release all its toxins. Nothing helps the liver clean out faster, more efficiently, more effectively than coffee enemas. And for cancer patients, when you're breaking down a tumor quickly with the enzyme, you get all this tumor debris that can be deadly and life-threatening. It gets the liver to work better, so they process these tumor wastes very effectively. And then you just poop them out with the enemas.
If we really look at our body, 3/4 of our body is water, if we're properly hydrated. Most people are not. We know that 70 to 80% of America is chronically dehydrated, so that's another whole problem. But why is water important? Water, believe it or not, functions in every system. From joints to the brain to the blood is 93% water. So people don't think, even down to the bones are 13 to 22% water. So water is everywhere in our system, and it's critical to health that we are properly hydrated. When we are not properly hydrated, our metabolic rate is reduced, our thought processes are reduced, the toxins that we are supposed to be removing are not happening, and so our bodies are taxed and burdened with having to do that in other ways. And so we end up with skin issues, we end up with a lot of different pathology just as a result of chronic dehydration, because we're not putting water in. I call water our filtration system for our body. So when we bring water in to our system, we want to void out that same amount of water, but take some things with it that we didn't want in our body in the first place. And that's the way I look at water. And if water is structured properly, it will do that. Free radicals are missing an electron.
Okay.
Our cells function electrically. Our bodies are electric, and we have a lot of electricity and electrons that are flowing in our system. And ultimately, without electrons, cells don't function properly. And the way free radicals harm us is they go and steal electrons from healthy cells.
So a free radical is what? It's missing an electron? It's
an oxygen.
Oxygen.
So a free radical is an oxygen missing one of its 8 electrons, so it only has 7 electrons.
So typically oxygen has 8 electrons? Okay, and a free radical is oxygen atom that is missing one of them.
That's right.
Okay.
So what it will do is it will go throughout the body and steal electrons from healthy cells that are weaker than the oxygen itself.
Okay.
And take it from it. Well, when it does that, that cell no longer functions appropriately or can't function at all, depending on what kind of cell it is.
Okay.
So that's why free radicals harm our system, is if we take out a percentage of our cells not functioning, we lessen the entire effectiveness of our system. It's like taking part of your engine away in a vehicle. It's not going to go.
Right.
So in our body being taxed and taxed and taxed, not only toxins, but we're actually oxidizing our cells, or that's what free radicals do, is they're stealing electrons, and electrons are the fuel. It's got to function electrically. You've got to have those electrons. So when we have water that's properly structured with a negative electrical charge, for instance, there's a net gain or an increase of 1 electron, which can be donated to complete those free radicals. It's basically what an antioxidant does. Any antioxidant that people are choosing has an extra electron, and that's how antioxidants function with the cellular system.
So then they donate that extra electron to the oxygen atom that's missing the electron.
To the free radicals. Yep.
Okay, and it basically completes the oxygen
That's
atom.
right.
Then what I'm hearing you say is that if you have water that's structured properly, it can act the same way as antioxidants, which everybody knows antioxidants are good.
That's right.
So talk about structured water. What is that?
So structured water is water that is mineral rich. So we need water to have minerals. Not that we need the minerals in our body, because the minerals that are contained in water are inorganic. They're rock. They're flowing off mountains, they're flowing wherever. They pick up minerals as they go throughout the Earth's surface or wherever they're going. They're picking up mineral content, and those minerals are inorganic. We don't need those minerals, but water needs those minerals so that water can be structured. And when we talk about structuring, we're talking about the electrical properties and the energy properties of water, so that water functions the way it should. Most people are not aware that tap water, for instance, has a positive electrical charge, not a negative electrical charge. Things that have positive electrical charges are oxidized. They'll oxidize other things. That's rust is oxidation.
Okay.
So that metal is being oxidized because electrons are being taken from it, not added to it. So you're weakening its structure. And ultimately, positive electrical charge is great from a sterilization perspective, but not from an antioxidant. It's actually an oxidant. And that's great for killing bacteria and viruses, because you want to oxidize them or steal their ability to function. But when it comes to our body, we don't want to do that to us. We want to have the opposite charge, the negative electrical charge, so that we're giving electricity back to us, or we're donating electrons to us. So effectively, structured water is water that has the proper electrical charge with the proper mineral content, and it therefore, when you think of any structure, a house or what have you, it's the foundation. It's the support mechanism to hold up the rest of that. Water needs to be structured. It needs that foundational electrical charge and the mineral content to support the way the water clusters are bonded and functioning together.
Talk about the difference between filtered water, alkaline water, structured water. We've all heard these terms. What's the distinction? What's the difference between these?
Okay, so trying to put it real simply for everyone to understand, because water can be very confusing. People go out on the internet and they look up things, and within 10 minutes they give up because it's extremely confusing to understand what the heck I'm supposed to do with water.
Right.
And people end up going back to tap water or bottled water, which is very unfortunate. Filtered water is simply running water through a filtration media, and there are many different types of media. Carbon. One of my favorite medias is KDF. It's a proprietary media that does some amazing things, and we have it in our filtration. For that reason, it's got 14 patents and is amazing. Zinc and copper together, that's what creates this media. But effectively, filtration, you're removing the things out of water. That's really
the bad
not
stuff
difficult.
you don't want.
Yeah, you're removing the chlorine, the chloramines, you're removing metals, you're removing different things out of water that you really don't want to be consuming in your system. Let's get them out before we put it in our body.
Which seems like a good idea.
Absolutely, 100%. And I'm a huge proponent for filtration. That's for sure. Filtration is one aspect. What we're really doing when we talk about structuring is we're using electricity and magnetic field to structure water. We're giving water an electrical charge. We're giving water a magnetic charge, which structures water. And ultimately, after we've already filtered it, because we do have a 9-stage filtration, then we're going through the process and we're charging the water through electricity. That's where the whole ECHO name came from, is electrically charged H2O. That's where the word ECHO came for what we're using. But having the dimensional structuring for water to have electric and magnetic field, we're duplicating what the Earth provides. People, probably the number one question I ask is, well, where does this happen in nature? And of course, living in Florida, I just point to the clouds when it's raining, and you're seeing a lot of lightning.
lightning is electricity. That's how water is being structured before it rains upon the earth, is lightning in the clouds.
So rainwater is structured?
Yeah, it is structured. Now, our issue is once we do something with it, we unstructure it, we change it, we put chlorine, we do all kinds of stuff through pressurized pipes and all kinds of things, and we change that structuring that nature does.
Everybody showers in chlorinated water, almost everybody. One shower, you can absorb 10 to 12 glasses worth of chlorine through your skin in one shower. Most people drink chlorinated water. That destroys your digestive tract. That is one of the biggest things for creating cancer in the body. And just because it's sanctioned, do you understand that all the things that are killing us today are sanctioned by our government and kept hush by the medical system? Why is that, Ty? That is true deception. We need to wake up. Next thing is, when we're talking about water, why would anybody drink out of this? The PCBs in this are enough to kill you. I see people going to Costco, and I see them loading up with 3 cases of this for the week. They're actually paying money, and they're trying to lift these big cases up, and their tummies are sticking out like they're 3 months pregnant. And that's the husband too. And they're drinking this. Did you ever open up a bottle, right? And then take a drink and you can taste the plastic? Mm-hmm. Well, that's your cancer fix. Now, there's cancer-causing chemicals in this every time you open a bottle, whether you taste it or not. So there's the water. Now, why am I talking about water? Well, because, Ty, you're almost 80% water. And you know what? Water is really important. If you want to be truly healthy, Ty, you need to gently cleanse on a daily basis. Just like you need to have certain rules. You don't have to be a health nut, but you need to have certain rules that I am going to always reach for something that's alive, not dead. I am always going to reach for something that's not packaged. I am always going to drink water that is structured and dynamic, that will actually bring in a life force into my body. If it's like, okay, do you know how you work really hard and then you go, oh God, I need a holiday. So then you go away on this 2-week holiday and you feel like, wow. And it takes 2 weeks for you just to calm your system down. And then you come back and it only takes you 3 days to get back to where you were before. Simple, life-changing steps will keep you away from all disease. And they will also pull you out of being fearful all the time, because you're just doing the right things and loving your body. If we gently cleanse every day and we don't allow the toxins to build up, why would you let all this waste build up and feel real crappy and then dump the load like a dump truck and you can't handle it? So when you get up in the morning, just like the animals, what do? Well, first thing the animals do in the morning when they wake up, because we are part of nature and we're disconnected from nature. When we return to nature, we will never have to live in fear again. So first thing you want to make sure you do every morning is have a really good bowel movement and really evacuate and clean out properly. Then you want to hydrate like we should do. You want to drink, if you weigh 200 pounds, then you need to drink 100 ounces of purified, structured, dynamic water a day. And you want to drink, so that would be like 4 quarts, right, Ty? But guess what? You want to drink 2.5 quarts by noon. And you want to have the other 1.5 quarts drank by 5 o'clock, because that's when you're all heated up and you, like a radiator, you want to keep your body cool and you want that detoxification to happen. So if you don't eat whole plant-based diet and drink plenty of water and then take something like a master cleansing herbal concoction that will go in and gently cleanse your body of what you pick up each day, then I'll tell you something. You're going to need a dump truck. Do you notice how every group has an icon, like a figure that they look up to, right? For the medical system, what's their icon? Their icon is Hippocrates. Hippocrates was the father of medicine. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read this because I don't want to get it wrong. So their leader, who they look up to because they took the Hippocratic Oath, right? Okay? This is what they look up to. Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. I don't know. They don't talk about diet. I mean, that's the root of all life. So right there, they've failed greatly. Make a habit of two things: to help, or at least do no harm. Meanwhile, we've got a war on cancer. You can't go to war with anything, Ty. You want to go to war with me? What happens?
We both die.
That's right. Next thing, natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. So where have they forgotten? They have forgotten. I haven't forgotten. You haven't forgotten. So we must go within, and we must understand something, that nobody's going to save your butt, Ty. When you got that body and you came down here on that planet, you made a promise to somewhere, somehow, that you were going to respect and love your body, and you were going to make the decisions. Every decision, okay, has a consequence, and it can be either good or bad. Now, do you let somebody else look after your finances, Ty? Well, why would you let someone else look after your body? Okay, one last thing that Hippocrates stated. Whenever a doctor cannot do good, he must be kept from doing harm. What happened to the Hippocratic Oath? I think the only thing that's left is called the hypocrite.
Powerful words from Dr. Wolf. What we have left is a hypocrite. So in tonight's episode, we learned how to flush the body with toxins, how to clean out your system. Tomorrow, we're going to learn how to fill it back up with the good stuff. We're going to learn about what we call advanced medicines. Is cancer eating away at you? We're going to teach you maybe how you can eat away at cancer. Help support our mission, join the movement, save lives. When you choose to own the 7-hour docuseries, The Quest for the Cures, or if you decide to purchase the whole package, the 27 DVD set, you're going to help us to achieve our mission to eradicate cancer once and for all. Not to mention, you're going to learn from some of the smartest people on the planet that are currently treating cancer naturally and effectively. A portion of the proceeds from every sale is going to go to the ICRF, which is the Independent Cancer Research Foundation. They're a nonprofit charity that actually research real, non-toxic, natural cancer cures, not the big three. Lastly, you're going to get an additional digital set, absolutely free, that you can share with friends or family. Please remember, cancer does not have to be a death sentence. Good night, God bless, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Hi, my name is Terry, and let me tell you about my story, my recovery from stage 4 breast cancer. Okay, in 2002, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I went through the medical route. I had surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. I ended up with a mastectomy. Every year, once a year, the cancer would come back. And then after the doctors started to give me a chemotherapy, which was a pill, which was so toxic, my husband wasn't allowed to touch it with his hands. But I'm supposed to swallow it twice a day. After that, and the doctor said, well, this will give you a few more months. And at that point, it was stage 4 cancer.
No, it didn't.
I went through it. I had these side effects, which burned my hands and the bottoms of my feet, and it felt like I was walking on rocks with sunburned feet. At that point in time, I just prayed to God. I said, all right, I'm ready to go home if that's what you want me to do. I'm really okay with it. But if you want more for me to do, just show me, because I've done everything I thought I should do, but it wasn't working. So after I prayed, and as I was recovering from all of the chemotherapy, I had read a lot about natural healing with for cancer. And through reading that, I got several different people contacted me through a route which encompassed the 5 essentials of maximized living. And this is before I even knew anything about that. But I ended up going through a detox, which was a detox program through raw foods and colonics and all kinds of things to detox my body. I took SEIT, but all kinds of natural routes. Well, after about 3 months, the cancer was gone, and it never did come back. And that's been 10 years. So through that, God healed me.